thanks for joining me today. My name's Jo and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in the UK. Today it's my Monday mashup, and I actually asked my husband to choose the stamp set that I was using for today, just to mix things up a little bit. And he chose the A Good Man stamp set from the annual catalogue. Now this is on page 32. It's this stamp set here. It is beautiful. I do love it. It's one of those that's really sort of got some really nice words and greetings and stuff like that in it, and it's also one that's good for the men, because obviously we do find it sometimes a bit difficult to create for them. And then as I looked over, I saw this lovely card here. Now, I think sometimes as demonstrators and just in general, we sometimes forget that these books are not just catalogues selling products. They've actually got some really good inspiration to things to create. So as soon as I saw this, I thought, yes, I really like that. I need to make that one. So what I've done, I've mixed up a few bits and pieces, because I don't have everything in this set in my collection. So I've had to think a little bit about what I do have and how can I can adapt those into to creating this project here. Now it's sometimes it's easier than others. The piece that I didn't have is these reeds here. So I had a look through what I did have, and I came up with here's the card here. I came up with this die, which is actually from the Dockside dies, which is part of the by the Dock stamp sets. So it was something that, you know, I hadn't really sort of thought of using with something else, but this inspired me to do that. So you know, I think sometimes we just need to think a little bit out of the box of how we're going to create something. So this is the card we're going to make today. I am going to make a couple of little amendments and adjustments as I go along the way. I thought it would be quite nice to have a blue border around this edge. And as you can see at the moment, this is actually on 3D dimensionals. So that's slightly raised, but my actual image is flat to that surface. So this time I'm going to make the base flat, but I'm actually going to raise this onto dimensionals. So hopefully we can use a few techniques. I've used something called paper piercing. Now I don't know if you've ever used this before, but it's a great technique for getting pattern and texture into something which otherwise might look a little bit flat. So I'm going to show you how I've done those. So I've pre-prepared all my bits and pieces ready for today. So first of all, we have our card base. Now this is crumb cake, and this is a standard C6 card. So it measures 21 centimetres by 14.85, and it's scored at 10.5 to give us our card base. I then have a layer in balmy blue. So this is going to be our border layer, and this one measures 13.85 by 9.5, so it's a centimetre shorter than our card base. I then have some DSP. Now this is taken from the In Good Taste DSP. This is the one that has all the lovely wood grains and tiles and things like that. It's so versatile. It's really, really good. And again, I've just cut this just slightly smaller. So this measures 9 centimetres by 13.35. I've then cut 2 additional strips of the same DSP, which are going to go at top and bottom. And this one is 3 centimetres wide, and this one is 2.5 centimetres wide. I just felt it gave it a better balance to have the top one very slightly smaller. I then have a circle that's been cut from crumb cake, and that's using the stitched dies. Stitched shape dies. Crikey, that was hard to say. So that's from those, and this is from the layer in circles in the white. And then finally, 2 little elements that I have are these little reeds that we've cut from the Dockside dies. So they're quite sort of they're a little bit smaller than the ones that I've used in the actual sample, but I still think they work really well. So that's those, and then I've just got some bits of ribbon here which we're going to work on in a while. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is to layer some pieces up. I want to put these pieces onto my DSP first, so I'm just going to glue those down, and I'm just using normal Tombow glue for this. Now when I created my original one, I actually stuck the DSP onto a piece of cardstock for the simple reason that our cardstock it just gives it a little bit more strength. I've purposely cut these a little bit wider so that I can just trim them off. I just find it easier to do that. So you can see I've already stuck a piece of cardstock on that. Because I've decided now to use a layer, I didn't actually need to do that, but I'm obviously not going to try and take it off because it'll make it worse mess than if I leave it there. So you don't need that extra layer if you're going to lay it flat onto your card. So just stuck those in place. I'm just going to trim them off. There we go. So that's our actual base. I'm then going to glue on my pieces of grass and reeds. Now this also has like a ear of like a reed here, and I've just taken a early espresso pen and I'm just going to colour in that top part of the reed. Okay, so I'm going to stick one on to start with. Now obviously these need to be joined, but the ribbon that we use hides that join. So all I want to make sure really is that I get my reeds in. I'm not too worried about the sort of the join in the centre because obviously that's going to be covered, but I do want to make sure that those reeds are going to show. Okay, now I've only stuck glue onto this bottom strip. I haven't stuck it under here so that we can poke our circle onto there once we're done. There we go. Okay, so now that's done, I'm going to wait to stick my ribbon and my greeting onto that until we've got everything in place so I know the exact position of it. So I'm going to put that to one side and then we're going to concentrate on our man. So I have my circle here, and we're also going to need a scrap of balmy blue, which we're going to do his shorts, and I'm also going to do his hat on this occasion. I didn't do it on this one originally, but I will do that this time. And also some patterned paper, so you can use whatever pattern paper you want to. I've used this one. I think this is quite a nice sort of set. It's called Playing with Patterns, so there's all sorts of patterns and things that are over it, so it's quite versatile for lots of different things really. So first thing I need to do is to ink my stamp, and I'm going to be using Memento because I am using some stamping blends just to colour the skin and the face on this one, and also the deck chair in the background. So I'm just stamping that onto my circle. I'm going quite high onto that circle. Okay, so put that to one side whilst I've got the ink here. I now need to stamp his hat, and I also need to stamp his shorts. So what I'm going to do, normally I would just do sort of one bit at a time, but I'm actually going to do him on that way. That's it. So I can see his shorts, and I've just got his hat on there, so I can cut those out in a second. And then finally ink it once again, and this time I just need his shirt. So I'm going to try and position my shirt roughly where one of these lines are. Just making sure I've got it all in, which I have. So there we go. So that's our stamping of that part done. Okay, so now that's done, I'm just going to start cutting out. Now, you do need to be a little bit careful when you're doing this, because obviously you don't want to remove parts that you shouldn't. She says on this particular stamp, could be vital. Okay, so I'm just going to cut around his trouser leg here. So to say, this is a little bit fiddly, this one, because we have got a very narrow section just at the bottom of his trouser leg there. So just gently sort of trim round and you should be okay. Okay, and then that's to remove that because that's the bottom of the actual deck chair. So if I bring my gentleman in, you can see that is now his trousers that have been cut. So the next thing I'm going to do is his hat. Now I might add some little shadows on these in a moment, because I'm cutting them from plain cardstock. They're actually sort of quite flat. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in my dark balmy blue blend pen, and I'm just going to add some little shadows in certain areas on the cap. Okay, and I think that will just be sufficient just to add a little bit of interest. I might just go over the edges very lightly with the lighter one, just to blend them through a little bit more. And then I'm just going to do the same with his trouser leg. So where you think there might be shadows, so where these lines are, there will always be a shadow created here. You might actually find it easier to do that before you cut it out. Again, just on my lighter one, just on those edges. Okay, so now that's done. So this is his trousers and that's his cap. And now I just need to cut his t-shirt out from here. So just again, just be careful not to remove anything that you don't want removed. It can be quite easy to do that, but the best thing to do if you're not sure is keep holding it up to your actual image. Okay, so hopefully that's all okay. So I'm just going to pop that in place and then I can see, yeah, that's all okay. So I'm just going to move those pieces out of the way for a moment, because I'm just going to add some very lightly with some balmy blue ink and just one of our daubers. I'm just going to colour very lightly into this background of where the man is sitting. I didn't want to leave it completely white, so I'm just adding really a tiny bit of colour, hardly at all, but it just takes the starkness of that white background away. And it squeaks lovely. There we go. So just a little bit in here as well. As I say, it just takes the starkness away. It's not anything, you know, any great detail. So the next thing I want to do is to colour his skin. So for this, I'm going to use the Stampin' blend, which is Ivory. This is great for a skin tone. It's quite a sort of instant skin tone. Quite often I use like a pink and sort of an orangey sort of colour, and that can create a nice skin tone too. With sorry, pinky yellow gives you a nice skin tone, but this one's quite instant. Now I also want to be able to add some little shadows in on this. Now you won't be able to do that with one pen unless you let each layer dry. So once I finish doing this leg, and I'll also do his neck, I'll then go back to his arms and add some details into it. Okay, so I want some darkness that's at the bottom of his arm here, around the crease of his arm and down sort of where his sleeve is. So I'm just sort of creating where natural shadows would appear if you were using sort of two colours. And the inside of his leg here, they all do blend quite nicely, so it's just to add that little bit of depth really. And again, under his cap it would be slightly darker, and part of his neck there. So I think that's all his skin done. The last thing we need to do quickly is the stripes on the chair and also the base here. So for the stripes on the chair, I chose to use light Misty Moonlight, but you could use any colour. A red would in fact look quite nice. And it is quite difficult to work out what stripe connects to which on this. So you just have to sort of try and follow your eye the best you can. But it doesn't matter massively. You're not going to have anyone looking at it, I don't think, that closely. There we go. So that's his stripes added. And then finally, for the sort of sandy base that I'm going to create, I've used, this is So Saffron, so this is the dark So Saffron, which I'm just going to add to the base. Again, quite a bit of this is covered, so you don't need to worry too much. And then I'm using light soft suede as well. And I find these two colours just create a nice sort of sandy sort of effect really. So once I've added that soft suede in, I'm just going to go back over with my So Saffron just to give it that more yellowy tone. There we go. So that's all our colouring done. Now all I need to do is to attach my pieces. So I find it easier when I'm attaching tiny pieces like this is to actually apply my glue onto my image. I just find because they're so fiddly, sometimes it is easier just to do it this way. So I think I'm going to do his shorts next. So I just need to do a little bit of glue here, a tiny bit, just at the top of his leg there. It just gives you a chance just to sort of fit it into place. There we go. So, and then finally his t-shirt here. Again, I'm just using tweezers just to pick these up. So there we go. So that's our man done. So now what I want to do is to glue this to my card. So I take my glue. And attach it to my circle. My stitched shapes circle. I never realised how difficult that was to say that. There we go. And I'm going to attach this time using dimensionals. It will just make it look slightly different from my original one here. So I've cased this from the catalogue. So casing can mean one or two things really. Sometimes people refer to it as copy and share everything. So you're copying somebody's design and you're actually copying it virtually to the letter, and then that's creating your project. Or sometimes we call it copy and selectively edit. So we're basically taking a design that's inspired us and then we're changing it to suit us. So it could be that we are, as in my case, I didn't have all the materials that I needed to make it exactly. So I've just done some slight adjustments just to, you know, make it my own really. So I'm just going to quickly feed this under my grass here. Oops. Maybe I should have stuck those on after. It wasn't a problem when it was flat. I think it's because it's on dimensionals. So there we go. I'm actually going to leave that raised slightly, I think. So it's just slightly higher this time. Okay, so now I've done that, I'm actually going to, I think, glue this onto my card so everything's in one place. So as I say, this is my balmy blue background border that I'm using. And then that's going to go straight onto my card front. Okay, and now I want to attach my ribbon. So I think the easiest way to attach ribbon in this sort of style is to use some kind of tape runner or some double-sided tape, something that will actually sort of make it easy to stick down, especially something like this, because this will fray really badly, this ribbon, if we're not careful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use our stamping seal, and this is just a roller, and I'm just going to lay down 2 or 3 little strips of the glue. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to see it properly or not on the camera, but there's just some taped glue here. So I'm going to take my ribbon. As I say, this ribbon is notorious for sort of fraying, and it's not the easiest to cut, if I'm honest. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. But there we go. So I'm just going to stick one on to start with. In fact, I think I need to go a bit lower on that one. I'm just going to go down here. There we go. Then trim another one. You can really cut this exactly as you want it. It is meant to look sort of, I don't want to say the word rough, but it's meant to look quite rustic. So I'll stuck those onto there. Now I've also got a piece of the old olive ribbon, which I'm going to use in a moment, but I just first of all want to do my greeting so that I know exactly where it's going to stick. Okay, so I now want to stamp my greeting. Now you're going to need a strip of card which is 1.3 centimetres wide, and we're going to be using this central part of this punch here. Now you do have to be quite precise with your measurements because you need to ensure that it does slip into that gully well. And the other thing we need to do is to ensure that our image actually appears sort of centrally to these two cut ends. Now, this punch does take a bit of getting used to, but some demonstrators have created clear plastic acrylic sort of pieces which you can use as a guide to cut your ends. They are brilliant. I think they're an absolute brilliant idea, but if you're anything like me, I would make them and then I would promptly put them down and never find them again. So I tend to do mine as I go. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to push that into the end of the punch first. So I have cut one end. I'm just going to keep that little piece there because I know that's what has come off the end. I'm then going to take my Memento ink and my greeting. Just ink it up nicely. And I'm just going to line that up onto my strip. So now what I need to do is I want to make sure that this is the same distance at the other end. Now, if I were to just cut it and guess, then you can guarantee it wouldn't be in the right place. So what I do is I hold up the little end piece that I've cut off at the other end so that it's equal distance either end. And then when I'm happy that that's where it is, that's where I'm going to just trim that excess off. So I'm going to remove that. So now I know when I pop this back in my punch, make sure it's all straight and punch again, I know that that is now in the right place. So as I say, there are some tools that you can make for yourself to actually to do that job yourself. But as I say, if you're like me, you're going to probably lose it. So I tend to do as I go. So I'm going to use my roller again, and I just want to add some tape just to the back of my greeting strip. And the reason I've done that is because I just want to attach my ribbon first. So I'm just going to line it up, and so that I've got a border of my ribbon. Now obviously it is sticky elsewhere still at the moment. Just going to trim the ends of my ribbon. Okay. And then because this is already glued, I'm going to stick that straight over the top. So there we go. So that is the card. So the other thing I thought would be quite fun was to maybe add some like almost like little rivets to the wooden planks at the top and bottom. So I am just colouring up some of our adhesive gems. These are our jewels, rhinestone jewels. And oh, I need 8, don't I? Can't count. So I thought what would be fun. So I've just used basic black to actually colour those in, and then I'm just adding them as if they were little nails or little rivets that are holding these top and bottom planks on. So again, you know, you can copy something identical, or you can just do variations of, you can build on something. That's why places like Pinterest are brilliant, because you give you an initial idea which then you can build upon. So there we go. So 2 different variations of the same card, which again are slightly different even to the original, which was in the catalogue. I'll bring them all in together. So you can see there's all 3. They're all very slightly different. Obviously, as I say, we didn't have these original long reeds, which would have been nice, but I think it still sort of looks really effective, and I think any man in my life would be quite happy to receive one. So, you know, I hope you like that. That's our mashup for today. Hopefully you'll give it a go, or give something a go, or even just use that inspiration from the catalogue. And I will see you next week for another Monday mashup. Thanks for watching. Bye.